There's an exhilaration when you're playing outdoors. And people, when they experience that, they want to do it again.
I think that's how you learn how to play hockey, and I think that's how you learn to have a love of the game.
Try stuff out here that we wouldn't do in a game.
Stick handling around and have fun. It's way more fun.
My first recollection of skating was on a frozen river, actually, which ran through the back of my grandmother's house.
You drive by some of these rinks in the winter and there's nobody out there. It's kind of sad, actually.
A lot of kids has been replaced by the indoor rink.
You don't see kids today. Kids got to get back out at it. They got to start doing it.
I think it's the age now of those guys that this is what we did, so we don't understand why it's not happening still. But it's not.
Well, the Golden Shovel arrives in Minneapolis today to scoop up excitement about this week's U.S. Pond Hockey Championship.
America's largest pond hockey tournament in January.
All these guys coming out here from all over the country.
So there's going to be everybody from All-Americans to ex-professionals.
Have a little fun, good skate, maybe a few beers after to lick our wounds.
Storm's probably the best pond hockey player out here.
We're going to predict first place.
Worried about playing anybody? No, it's pond hockey.
I suppose we all have something to prove because we're out there.
I'm going to win this thing. Instead if I pass away out there, I wouldn't mind.
That's what I'm excited for this tourney, is that it's going to be kind of the same, like you're a little kid again.
Holding this tournament reminds everybody where it came from and what hockey's really all about.
As a kid who skate outside and cold air, and I like it. It's awesome. That's how it should be.
It's part of the way that we light our way through the long, dark northern winter.
To me, it's closer to the true spirit of the game.
I wish I could go back and be 8 years old again for a couple days.
And the game is over. The United States wins.
The best U.S. hockey team ever put together was the 1960 Olympic team. That was the first miracle.
We were really there for one reason, and that's to win.
Bill Cleary coming in.
We weren't expected to win the gold medal. Their pressure was on the Canadians and the Russians.
That was Canada's era of dominance.
All you read about is what Canada's going to do to poor U.S.
Well, you can count in one hand the number of times the U.S. beat Canada in the Olympics.
It was the Cold War. The Russians were the bad guys. It was the big bear with the hammer and sickle.
Sologubov for backhand shot in front. Alexandrov and
the Russians had come in, and they started to win it every single year.
They played a different style of hockey.
They were strong, fast. They were like a machine.
Who taught them to play this way?
Our buddies were now getting cut just prior to the Olympics.
I didn't care whether they liked me or not.
I think they probably wanted to kill the man.
I think there might have been a little coldness.
It wasn't cool, it was ice cold.
Well, let them quit. Find where they want to give them the plane ticket and get them out of here.
I don't care if you speak to me the rest of your life, but when we're out there, you pass the puck to me, I pass the puck to you, and that's all that counts.
These guys were not just the best players of their time, they were among the best American players of all time.
Don't forget, we were a group of young kids, and we got a chance to win a gold medal, something that's never been done by an American team.
I'm a David guy versus Goliath. In this particular time of February 1960, it was David's time.
That team was underappreciated the day after they won the gold medal.
I think it's easy for us to forget about and overlook those players and those accomplishments.
Nobody made a big issue of it, but we all feel very proud of it.
How many people today really remember it?
I wanted this team to be remembered as a solid hockey team that won the first gold medal for the United States.
Christian, number 10, ridden off by Sidorenkov. Sidorenkov goes down. Bill Christian has it. 12th in front.
By and large, they get nowhere near the kind of contemporary recognition. Anytime sports writers start writing about the history of U.S. hockey, it seems to begin at Lake Placid.
You know, and people say, what's the difference now and then when 80 won it? Or I just don't forget, I think the film was in black and white when we played. It's now in color.
Bill Cleary coming in.
USA, USA. Well, they were yelling that for us, too.
The media wasn't just as all-encompassing as 24/7 as it is now.
Sologubov for backhand shot in front. Alexandrov, and he scores.
In 1960, people weren't paying that much attention to it.
We probably were a little bit ahead of our time.
Nobody made a big issue of it, but we all feel very proud of it. That team was underappreciated the day after they won the gold medal.
I think it's easy for us to forget about and overlook those players and those accomplishments.
How many people today really remember it?
We were really there for one reason, and that's to win. And I think in the heat of a game, you forget all your likes and dislikes. And I think that's the great thing about sport. And that was so evident in '60 because every game, as I said, we won, it became more and more evident that we had a shot to win that gold medal. And we weren't going to let any little petty things get in our way.
They played all of the world hockey powers.
We had to play Russia and Canada back-to-back.
All you read about is what Canada's going to do to poor U.S.
This team was not expected to do that well.
They beat Canada, they beat the Soviet Union, they beat Sweden, they beat Czechoslovakia twice. It's an amazing feat.
We weren't expected to win the gold medal. Their pressure was on the Canadians and the Russians.
It was the Cold War. The Russians were the bad guy. It was the big bear with the hammer and sickle.
They were good, and we really, do we have a chance?
There weren't any American citizens any better than these guys.
I'm a David guy versus Goliath. And this particular time of February 1960, it was David's time.
Don't forget, we were a group of young kids, and we got a chance to win a gold medal, something that's never been done by an American team. And that was the only focus that we had on.
Since the beginning of hockey, Canada has been synonymous with the sport. During the 1950s, the National Hockey League showcased many of the greatest players in the world, and all of them were from Canada. At the same time, Canada's amateur teams dominated international competitions, winning 6 of the first 7 Olympic gold medals.
If you go back to like the 20s, 30s, 40s, that was Canada's era of dominance.
While Canada stood alone atop the ranks of international ice hockey, the world's 2 superpowers jockeyed for ideological supremacy.
We have a tendency these days to think about the 50s as happy days, things reasonably peaceful, reasonably prosperous, but there also was increasing Cold War tension.
The relationship between the Western world and the Soviet Union was about to explode at any time.
Yeah, we were being taught to duck under our desks at different times in school to prepare for their atomic blast, that Russia may be invading us or bombing us at any given moment.
We all know the atomic bomb is very dangerous. Since it may be used against us, we must get ready for it, just as we are ready for many other dangers that are around us all the time.
The escalation of the Cold War arms race left many Americans feeling uneasy at the growing influence of their new international rival.
We'd already been through World War I and World War II, and we needed another.
It was a time of suspicion of anybody from the Soviet Union.
We didn't know much about the Russians in those days. They were that ogres over there.
There was a lot of publicity in the West about what was going on in the Soviet Union.
We knew about Khrushchev, who went to the UN and banged his foot on a table, you know. They were scary people.
So you have a political rivalry, a military rivalry, a diplomatic rivalry, an economic rivalry, a social cultural rivalry, and you also have the sports rivalry.
Soviet sportsmen burst onto the international ice hockey scene in 1954.
54 was their first world championships, and nobody expected them to be, able to touch Canada, and they beat them in their first international competition in the World Championships. And that was, of course, a blow to Canada's pride and a shock to the international hockey community.
In 1956, the Soviets entered the Winter Olympics for the first time.
They win the gold medal in their Olympic debut in Cortina. So they come out of the gate playing an extremely high level of hockey.
Oh, they just tic-tac-toe. They didn't have the big slap shot or stuff that in those days. They just passed it around until they caught you off guard and slipped it in the back of the net on you.
They played a different style of hockey. They were not individuals. You had to pass the puck. If they scored a goal, they wouldn't pat each other on the back. It was unbelievable to watch.
They were like a machine. They were strong, fast, well-disciplined.
And they did more passing than shooting. I mean, a lot of times they'd pass up good shots, and you'd say, well, God, thank God they didn't shoot,
Body checking wasn't part of their game. They wouldn't start running people and slamming into the boards. They just wanted the puck and move it.
Who taught them to play this way? I mean, we've been playing for 100 years, and we don't play this way.
What I think was one of Tarasov's brilliant insights is they would never be able to mimic the Canadians as well as the Canadians could be Canadians. And what they did was develop a system that took elements of communism, was focus on the collective and playing as a team, emphasis on passing the puck. And they developed a system that was not only effective, but it was very hard for players in other countries to mimic the Soviet system in practice.
The USSR's athletic success stole the headlines in Cortina, but lost in the excitement was the surprising showing of the American team. By beating Canada 4-1, the U.S. finished with the silver medal.
That was the first time the U.S. had ever beaten Canada in the Olympics.
We weren't supposed to beat them. They were still smarting from that coming into Squaw Valley.
That was a tremendous blow to Canadian pride.
I'm looking at personnel. We had a great team in 56.
A lot of Minnesotans on that team, and Billy Cleary from out of the East.
Those are all guys that I grew up watching play in college, I mean, I idolized those guys,
Although they had picked us to finish fifth, we thought we had a good enough team to do better, and we did.
The Americans would lose to the Soviets in the 56 games, missing their chance for a gold. The following year, the U.S. hoped to build on their Olympic success at the 1957 World Championships.
You see, in 57, the World Championships were held in Moscow, and we weren't allowed to go in because of the Hungarian situation.
Canada, the United States, and a number of the other democratic countries declined to go to Moscow and participate in the tournament.
That was not unheard of at that time for state departments, presidents, etc., to get involved and to say forbid athletic competition on the basis of politics.
Until 2 days ago, that sound had never been heard on this earth.
Suddenly, it has become as much a part of 20th century life as the whir of your vacuum cleaner. It's a report from man's farthest frontier, the radio signal transmitted by the Soviet Sputnik.
Well, Dr. Newell, what about the vital question that everybody is thinking about? Why and how did the Russians beat us to the draw?
This gets a lot of people concerned. The Americans are lagging behind the Soviets in education.
I should make it very clear that I do not think we're doing enough, that I am not satisfied as an American with the progress that we're making. And I think in the final analysis, it depends upon what we do here. I think it's time America started moving again.
As the decade came to a close, the U.S. hockey team got a glimpse of life behind the Iron Curtain in preparation for the 1959 World Championships.
To think that you're going to go behind the Iron Curtain for 30 days in 1959 was awesome.
They brought us in at night. Okay, so we couldn't see anything outside of the Moscow area.
The KGB followed us everywhere, you know, and they wouldn't be that far behind. We'd yell at them, come on up, walk with us, but they would never do it.
And we noticed there was no color to the people's dress or anything. And that's kind of disturbing when you live in the United States.
Our players kept saying, geez, I want a Coca-Cola. I said, you know what? They don't have Coca-Cola here. They never even heard of Coca-Cola.
We're in a country that from all we heard and read about that didn't like us very well, so which turned out that the people were great there. And
no matter where you go in this world, there's one common denominator, and that is sport. It's an international language that everyone understands and respects.
Politically, you never got any discussions about communism. And they were just good friends and athletes and competitive, and they were fun.
The team members got along pretty well with their Russian counterparts. There seemed to be a lot of camaraderie there between the two teams.
We were with the Russians after the game, and everyone was having a few drinks, and we got this fellow, Alexandrov, who was a great hockey player. And we kept saying, "Niet pass, no pass, stick handle," which was not the Russian way of playing it. And he's going, yeah, and then he's going, Tarasov, who was the coach, who was a great guy, Tarasov too. He said, niet good. And so we had him, and all of a sudden, two fellows came up behind him in gray coats. And Alexandrov weighed about 215. And one came under one arm and one under the other, picked him right up in front of us, brought him to the elevator and down. I tell you, our mouths were still open. I thought you read about these things in books, you know.
We got an opportunity to see how they lived, and we were very, very glad to be out of there when the series was done.
I probably was so young and naive, I didn't appreciate the importance of the trip.
A lot of these fellows on that team hadn't played in Europe, and they learned the refereeing, and they learned a lot of things.
I think the big importance in the international hockey is you're playing on the bigger ice surface, and you're playing against teams who are playing the style of play that you're going to see in the Olympics.
Playing 30 games in 60 days, the American national team gained valuable international experience against some of the best teams in the world.
We had to play the Swedish national team, Olympic team, in an outdoor rink in Stockholm in a snowstorm. And every 5 to 10 minutes they would stop the game and clear off the ice.
They didn't have stands. What they'd do is they'd blow snow up and then terrace it off. So you had to stand on the snow. And let me tell you, it was not warm outside. It was pretty cold up there, and we were 10 miles from the Arctic Circle.
This big defenseman, Lasse Bjorn, cross-checked Waldy Olsen in the face and broke his jaw.
I think he lost about 10 teeth, 30, 40 stitches, and 2 broken cheekbones. So McCartan came out of the net because he was the only big guy we had, and they had a little fight going on.
Well, it was just a big fight, and it was snowing like a son bitch. Everybody was fighting. It was just, I think the fight ended and everybody just left and went home. I don't think we ever finished the game.
They didn't agree with some of the things we were doing on the ice, so they took a few shots at us.
The cops were, hitting them with their billy clubs and things.
The fans start throwing snowballs at us. And here there are 25,000 people, and what a night it was. What a great memory. The Swedes were great.
I wish kids today would have a chance to do it. We're so sterile the way they go and play the game. We'd played in snowstorms, we played in rainstorms, we played in everything.
The final stretch of the international tour would end in Prague, Czechoslovakia.
We had a pretty good team in '59. We played the World Championships in Prague.
There were 6 teams in the tournament, and when we got there, I was told that we'd be playing the Canadians and the Czechs and the Russians in about 5 days, three games in 5 days against those teams. And I said, well, we might as well go home.
Canada was just loaded. I mean, they had all pros.
Those guys were making $300 a week or something. So you'd see them around town, and they'd say, "What do you guys make?" $7 a week or whatever it was. So you didn't do it for money.
Prague was a huge rink, really big.
Big, dark arena, so you could hide and run around there and take a high shot, and no one could see it. Paulie Johnson would take slap shots, and the goalies couldn't see it.
Center Paul Johnson led the '59 national team with 82 points in only 54 games.
Could he skate? And could shoot like crazy.
Yeah, he was a little hyper. Paulie was.
I think I ate too much. They said I was eating all the time.
Paul was a go-getter. He might not be really feeling up to the game, but once he hit the ice, he was a 100% hockey player.
Johnson and the Americans played well in Prague, defeating the Swedes, the Finns, and the Czechs.
We had third place sewn up until the last minute of a Czech-Canadian game.
Canada had already won, and they decided to force the play and pull their goaltender. Well, the Czech center just picked it up and fired it home.
And that put the Czechs in the third on a goals for and against. So if I'd have made one more save, we'd had a bronze medal, but we ended up in fourth.
The Americans left Europe without a medal, while the Canadians took first and the Soviets finished second.
The Canadians think that the Soviet challenge has been blunted, and that when the Canadians go to Squaw Valley, they'll beat up the Russians, the Americans, the Czechs, the Swedes, anybody else who gets in their way, and return to Canada's rightful place as the dominant Olympic hockey power.
California's Squaw Valley, the dream setting for the 1960 Winter Olympics, awaits the great day.
The tiny hamlet of Squaw Valley, California, feverishly prepared for the next meeting of hockey superpowers at the 1960 Winter Olympics. Meanwhile, the U.S. Olympic Committee was searching for a new head coach for their hockey team.
Apparently the 2 front runners were Jack Riley of West Point and Harry Cleverly of Boston University.
Riley had been piped in. He was well established. First for the national team, he was a player, then as a coach.
Jack got 11 votes, and the only vote for Harry Cleverly was by Jack Riley.
Riley's first order of business was selecting the team that would represent the U.S. in the 60 games.
Johnny Mariucci was a good friend of mine, so I was going to have one training camp in Minnesota, and John would take care of that, and in Boston, Harry Cleverly at the arena. He was the BU coach.
And from there, 25 guys were selected to go to West Point just before Christmas in 1959.
I knew most of the players, and I made a couple of trips to Boston. I only made one trip to Minnesota.
He came in to watch a scrimmage, and he says, "Okay," he says, "there'll be a posting down in the locker room." This is the truth. I went down and I'm looking at the names, and I was saying, God, he cut some pretty good guys. My name wasn't on there, and what he did was post the guys who made the cut.
That era was the era of the stand-up goalie, and Jack McCartan really wasn't a true stand-up goalie.
Jack was our goaltender in '59 in Prague, and he was phenomenal. And we just thought he was a shoo-in, but he got cut.
The team converged at West Point, where Coach Riley was tasked with getting his players ready for the grueling Olympic schedule.
Training camp at West Point was tough because they had the largest rink in the United States.
They called our rink Lake Superior with the roof, 232 by 90.
Jack would often select players to play in the afternoon against his cadets, and so you'd get a little extra time on the ice.
And I'd have my team, after practice, would skate quite a while. Instead of going from goal to goal, I'd go sideways because you can loaf a bit going goal to goal, but going sideways you can't loaf.
When the original group was going through the drills at West Point, I think they probably wanted to kill the man because he believes that you win a game in the third period. You win a game on strong legs.
He had his own style. He wasn't close to the players.
I didn't care whether they liked me or not. I didn't. If they didn't like me, it's too bad.
He doesn't have to buddy with them, and he didn't.
Riley, I think, was the kind of guy who was a driven and intense coach. He emphasized conditioning.
I overdid it, but I knew that's the only way we were going to win.
We'd scrimmage up there, and the goals were going in fast and furious.
We had inter-squad games, and the scores were 10-12 and 13-14.
Obviously, there was a big need for some goaltending.
Jack Riley had us at his house for dinner, and he asked us how we could best improve the team. We said, bring Jack back.
So one of the reasons Riley had problems with him was he thought he went down too much and too soon. As we now know, going down is not such a bad thing. It actually, you stop a lot of low shots.
Before Jack could make it back to the Army in Fort Carson, he was still in St. Paul, and they called him back.
Everybody knew we needed McCartan badly.
I think that Riley's principal task, and it was a hard one, was to get the right guys together, to get the right team on the ice.
At the end of the training camp in West Point, Coach Riley named his former teammate Jack Corain as Olympic captain.
Jack was more of a stay-home defenseman, and he could body check, and he played the body well.
And he's one of the toughest competitors that I ever played with. And I'll tell you, if you're going to war, you want Corain on your side.
I think Jack Corain was a veteran presence and kind of a wise elder.
He played in the 48 Olympics. Now this is a 60 Olympics, 12 years later. Firefighter, 2 kids. He was 31 years old.
So he had a job that he ended up taking 4 months of unpaid leave away from. And then when he returned, he got denied a promotion because of a break in service.
As true amateurs, Corain and his teammates were asked to put their lives and careers on hold to play for their country.
The Olympics at that time for an American hockey player was the highest pinnacle you could aspire to. They weren't being given chances to play in the National Hockey League, even though some of them were good enough. And so playing on that Olympic team meant everything to them as players and as athletes.
January 2nd, 1960, as final preparation for the Olympics, the team embarked on a cross-country exhibition tour.
We started out in the East, and we were playing up in Maine and New Hampshire. We went to the Midwest and played college teams.
We played in Duluth, Green Bay, at Minneapolis, and in War Road, Grand Forks, but we were losing as many as we were winning.
We played some very good college teams on the road all the time, and we didn't set the house on fire.
2 of the players missing when Riley's team left West Point were Billy Cleary and John Mayasich, stars of the 1956 silver medal team.
The 2 best players in America were my brother and John Mayasich.
These guys were not just the best players of their time, they were among the best American players of all time.
I got a call from John Mayasich in Minnesota. I knew how good he was. He's one of the best hockey players ever played there.
Mayasich is a guy that when you read about his accomplishments, he seems like a real-life Paul Bunyan. Some of the stories about him, they said that he could kill a penalty by taking possession of a puck and stick handling around and through and evading the other team for the entire 2 minutes.
Mayasich was big enough, he was 6 foot 180, strong, athletic, and understood the game. I want that guy in defense. You can control the game back there, and he did.
He had a wicked slap shot. He's one of the first that had really a good slap shot. He could be an all-star center iceman. Now he's playing defense. Well, now he's controlling the puck. He can move the puck up.
He preceded the Brian Leaches and the Bobby Orrs and the Ray Borks as far as being a defenseman who was really a great offensive threat.
He is a figure who should loom much larger in the American collective imagination than he does.
They contacted me probably the summer before and wanted to know if I'd be available, and I had the commitment to Green Bay and said I couldn't leave until the season was over.
He said, I can't come to West Point because of a job. I said, John, I'll meet you at Squaw Valley. So I said, if I'm going to give a good Western player the time, I'll give Billy Clary, who was the top Eastern player. So I called Billy and I said, Billy, you don't have to show up at West Point. He said, well, what about Bobby?
And they just wanted Billy. They weren't sure about Bob. And Billy wouldn't come unless Bob could come.
I knew that the team I had, after we finished the training schedule, that we weren't going to win.
You got Canada and you got Russia, and here we are going through the country, and we're having a hard time with collegiate.
That wasn't acceptable to Riley, so that's when we said, got to make this change.
I called Walter Brown, who's a very good friend of mine. He's Mr. Hockey in Boston, owned the Celtics, president of the Garden. I said, Walter, do you want to go to Squaw Valley with a chance to win or no chance? I want a chance to win. All right, I want the two Clarys, Billy and Bobby. You can't do it. Walter, I'm the coach. I want them.
So finally, Jackie asked me to come out, and I said yes, and my brother too. And
I think some of the guys might have felt that the Bobby Clary's come in wasn't fair because he hadn't gone through training camp along with everybody else.
When Jack Riley wanted Bill Cleary, he could cut another Eastern guy to make room for Bill Cleary. To add Bob Cleary, Coach Riley had to cut one of the Minnesota guys, who turned out to be Herb Brooks.
Herb Brooks picked up a lot of things from Jack Riley. They were similar in their temperaments and able to get inside guys' heads. And
Herb used to laugh about it. You know, he obviously made the right choice, but it hurt. That was a very, very painful thing. And then Herb, of course, had to do it 20 years later.
And every coach has to drop someone. He was the only forward that hadn't played in Europe, so I went with more of a veteran team.
Just 2 weeks before the start of the games, Herb Brooks, Bob Dupuy, and Larry Ulm would leave the team to make room for John Mayasich and the Cleary brothers.
they had lost the night before to the University of Denver, who had a great hockey team. So we were just sitting there waiting for them to come in. And when they came in, everyone just kept going right by us. And no one said hello, and I said, ooh, this is good.
I think there might have been a little coldness toward them when they first came in.
It wasn't cool, it was ice cold reception that we received.
There was friction because our buddies were now getting cut just prior to the Olympics.
Some of the fellows in the team said that he brings them in, they're going to quit, I guess. I don't know. So I said, Jim Claypool came in and talked to me, and I said, well, let them quit. Find where they want to give them the plane ticket and get them out of here.
So I had to explain to them if they went and took off and went home that they probably wouldn't play in a U.S. amateur game for the rest of their days.
I think Jack gave a little speech, so they didn't want to tussle with Jack, so everybody stayed.
Whether you agree or you don't agree, Jack Riley is the man on the spot. It's not Jim Claypool, it's not 17 players, it's one guy.
This is Walter Cronkite back at our anchor position for our CBS television coverage of these Olympic Games. Here in the IBM Data Computing...
The 1960 Games were a transition to the modern age of Olympic competition. Computerized scoring, medal skis, and the Zamboni were introduced in Squaw Valley. The 8th Olympiad also marked the end of a more innocent era, where celebrities, athletes, and the public mingled in a quaint village beneath the California sun.
Squaw Valley was a great place. It was nice and little, you know, and you could go to every event with walking distance, you know.
And Walt Disney had done a terrific job of designing statues and everything. 4 players to a room, and we had very nice facilities.
It was wonderful because in the village, we all ate together. We had a recreational room, we'd play ping pong, and that's where we got to know all the different teams from the different countries.
It was cozier. It was a cozier games, cozier era.
While the crowds in Squaw Valley cheered alongside Hollywood stars, throughout the rest of the country, Americans watched the competition on their living room television sets for the very first time.
A full hour of colorful pageantry at Squaw Valley, California opens the 8th Winter Olympics. At the futuristic $3.5 million ice arena, Vice President Nixon heads the dignitaries, before whom pass 740 athletes from 30 nations in the traditional parade.
Of the 30 nations competing in the Olympics, 9 would field a hockey team, including the Americans, who were predicted to finish no higher than 5th.
Just before the games started, we had a meeting, and they had each coach come up and put on the board the schedule they wanted. No one wanted to play Canada and Russia back-to-back. So the Canadian coach got up, then the Russian, the Czech, and it was my turn. I'm not getting up. What do you mean? We're going to go undefeated. We're going to beat everyone. And the newspapermen couldn't believe it. I, being a wise guy.
You know, to say, well, did we think we were going to win the gold medal? I'm sure we didn't think that, but we wanted to win at least a bronze or a silver.
I think if you look at our track record going in, if we were a dark horse, we were very dark.
The Americans' first test was Czechoslovakia, the team many expected to finish with the bronze.
They had played twice in Los Angeles. They won the first game. It was a tough game. They had to score 2 or 3 goals in the closing minutes of the second exhibition game in order to get a 5-5 tie. So Riley knew the Czechs were going to be tough. His players certainly knew the Czechs were going to be tough.
Still learning to play with their new teammates, the U.S. fell behind, trailing the Czechs 4-3 at the second intermission.
They then scored 4 goals in the third period and beat them 7-5. Mayasic had 3 goals. Now here's a guy with 1 practice behind him. He scored 3 unassisted goals, had an assist too. It was, it kind of showed you that all those months of touring, when it comes down to it, the best players will rise to the top.
Mayasic and the Clarys basically made the whole thing gel.
Without the 2 Clarys and Mayasic, we would have been fighting Australia for 5th. They were the key to that was the whole key.
The Americans' powerful new lineup cruised into the medal round with a 12-1 victory versus Australia.
Now you're down to the last 6. But once you get there, then you're in round robin. And that way you had to win every game and win as decisively as you could.
As the U.S. opened the medal round against the Swedes, Coach Jack Riley was still tinkering with lineups in an attempt to improve team chemistry.
And we're up doing warm-ups, and we could hardly get a puck from anyone just to take a shot on the goalie in warm-ups. And I can remember going on the ice, and I said, Rabbit, that's Bobby McVeigh, who's a great friend of ours, and I said, Rabbit, I came 3,000 miles only to do one thing, that's win. I don't care if you speak to me the rest of your life, but when we're out there, you pass the puck to me, I pass the puck to you, and that's all that counts.
Well, there's team dynamics and everybody worries about it, but I think that they are overrated. I think that really what brings a team together is winning.
The very first shift we're on there, I got a puck, or my brother gave it over to me, and I took a shot towards the net, and it hits Rabbit's stick and goes in the net. And there's a great picture of the 3 of us hugging and kissing each other.
They beat Sweden 6-3. Roger Christian has 3 goals. McCartan's got high 30s in saves. So it had to be a very even game. And, that's a big win.
We played well against the Swedes. We played well against Germany.
The hard feelings from weeks before were evaporating, and the Americans were bonding on and off the ice.
When we weren't playing or practicing, the players were on the room. I didn't say you do this and that. They could do what they wanted to do.
There wasn't a hell of a lot to do there. I mean, like I say, the guys went to Reno one night.
We'd hop a bus somehow. There'd be buses. Of course, there's so many people around it, So we go in and play blackjack all night and then go back.
Paulie went in and lost some money and come back and told Jim Claypool, the manager, that he had to go back to Green Bay right away and make some money because he needed some money.
What do you do? Because Paulie is Paulie, and he might do whatever. He was like going to leave. So I changed my law, and I loaned him the $100 so he could pay and stay.
The Americans were perfect through 4 games, but the 3 remaining contests would be their toughest competition by far.
Now they got the 2 big games back to back, Canada, Russia.
You got to go on to the next game, and you just hope that you can keep the momentum going.
Pretty soon after you win enough, you think, boy, we got a chance here.
Yeah, we were getting more confident all the time, you know. We said, yeah, maybe we can do this. You know, we were playing good. And like I say, we had a good team.
This was a team that was experienced, that felt good about themselves, but they still were facing a team they almost never beat in international play.
That brought us to the Canadian game, and that was the moment of truth.
Despite the growing confidence of the U.S. team and coach Jack Riley, the sports writers and the Canadians felt the game would be a blowout.
They just thought they were so much stronger. I mean, the idea that they talk about, hey, we thought we were going to beat these guys by 7 goals, that's an awfully wide margin in hockey. That's not an opponent that you respect and expect is going to give you a good fight.
Well, you can count in one hand the number of times the U.S. beat Canada in the Olympics.
You're just hoping that you could play a good game and be competitive, you know, and you knew you were going to be in tough against them.
They were like playing teams that were in the NHL.
I still consider the Canadians in 1960 our biggest opponents.
You know, in the locker room, I think everyone in their own mind just said, hey, we're going at them and we're going to show them that we can play the game.
Knowing they needed a strong start, the U.S. attacks relentlessly in the first period.
We had a face-off in the Canadian end of the ice.
And I got the draw back to John Mayasich.
Mayasich took a long shot, which he could from the point. He had a good shot.
And I got the rebound and knocked it in as I was getting hit pretty good by Mr. Sinden.
And I think that was a big lift. That gave us a big lift because we knew, hey, we could do it against them.
Just the fact that we stayed with them as the game progressed, you had that feeling, boy, we've got a chance. We get a goal here and we're in it.
Before we played Canada, I had another meeting with my board, Jim Claypool and Benny Bettini. They said, whatever you do, don't play Paul Johnson against the Canadians because he never goes back in the defensive zone. He didn't know where it was.
Johnson was a great offensive player, but he was not a strong defensive player.
The Canadian team was pressing in our zone and came out from the corner behind me. I think Mayasich was on my side on defense. And we went to pick up the guy, and he shot the puck back out to the defense. But when he shot it out, Paulie intercepted it.
He had a breakaway from the red line in. He was all alone, and he got to the blue line and shot.
Took a big booming slap shot, put it over his shoulder, and I mean, just a great goal.
Paulie came toward the bench, and I said, Paulie, why'd you leave it go so early? He said, I had him beat.
When that went in, I mean, it was like heaven. We were there.
You know, our bench erupted, and it caused some great concern for the Canadians. You could see them, you know, say, ooh.
Desperate to even the score, the Canadians mount a blistering counterattack, launching 32 shots in the last 2 periods against goalie Jack McCartan.
We got scoring chance after scoring chance after scoring chance after scoring chance, and we're getting nowhere.
Of course, McCartan was tremendous, and he was stopping everything.
He just rose to a level that had not been seen.
He had Canadian players talking to themselves, I know that.
But then it was just a matter of hanging on. They scored 1 goal, and we just hung on until we could get the victory.
It was a big shock in 1960 to get beat by a team that was probably ranked about 4th or 5th in that tournament.
A great time to hear the final bell.
And then everybody is, you know, throwing their gloves around and sticks like they do, you know.
almost any time we play Canada, we're the underdogs. And for us to do what we did against Canada, that was pretty good.
They're still talking about it, but that's good.
Beating Canada was probably one of the big thrills. The fact that you'd never think you could.
A hot goalie at the right time could make a difference between a mediocre team and an Olympic gold medal victory team.
No goalie ever played as well as McCartan played that night.
The crowds in Squaw Valley were beginning to buzz about the upstart American hockey team. They were also celebrating the gold medal victories of American figure skaters David Jenkins and 20-year-old phenom Carol Heiss. In the Alpine competition, when officials were unsure if a skier missed a gate in the slalom, they asked the camera crew for permission to review the tapes. It was the birth of instant replay. Meanwhile, Germany's Helmut Recknagel flew to gold in the large hill ski jump. Every event was a fierce competition, but in the end, the USSR dominated the overall medal count.
Oh boy, these Winter Olympics have come right down to the wire in a dramatic race for second place in the unofficial team standings. Russia has, of course, cinched first place. It has lapped the field with a total of 20 medals.
Just as in 1956, the Americans' road to the gold medal passed through the Soviets, a team they'd never beaten.
The Russians had come in, and they started to win it every single year. They were dominant.
We'd come back from 56 saying, boy, you ought to see those Russians. They are really good. No one ever seen them. They didn't know how good they were. Only the guys that had played against them knew how good they were.
Their defenseman, Sologubov was a tremendous defenseman.
He was about 6 feet and could absolutely fly.
They had a guy by the name of Alexandrov, who was a big 6'2" centerman, and he'd set up in the slot.
I mean, they'd been together for years. We were together. Some of us were only together a couple of weeks.
They got good at what they did, or they weren't a sportsman and no longer were on the team, and then they had to go and get a regular job.
You got them right under your thumb, because if they don't play hockey, their life isn't as good as it is if you're a hockey player.
Well, that was their life. They played hockey.
I'd watched them in 59 and in 56, and I knew we were underdogs.
I played a number of games against Russian teams, and we had never beaten them.
So I believe that you're dealing with psychology. You think, God, we're going to go on the ice and we're going to be number 9 victim.
I was in that rec center there the day before we were playing the Russians, and this little Latchev, the little winger, was in there. He's coming over and he says, tomorrow I'm going to put one here and one there. Yeah, he was talking trash, yeah. Before trash was trash, yeah.
The anticipation was building for the hockey showdown between the USSR and the USA, and the 8,500-seat Blythe Arena was filling up quickly.
Tickets became hard to get and everything. I didn't, and of course, at that time, they didn't give us any tickets or anything to the games.
And I was giving friends of mine, one was carrying one skate, another guy was carrying another skate, guys were carrying my stick, and I'm walking them through the gate to get them in.
And they pack about 10,000 people into the arena. So many people are packed in that reports are there were spectators sitting on the American team bench.
Benny Bertini, who was our trainer, he was from Lexington. Benny went over and said to this group of people, he said, hey, you can't stay here, you got to get off the bench. And finally one fellow says, well, you know who that is? He says, no, it's Pat Brown, the governor of the state of California. He said, I don't care, we got to get him off, we can't. But it was... it just, as I said, the interest grew and grew.
What they called a ragtag team of insurance men and carpenters, which we weren't. It was suddenly going to become a Cinderella team.
The unlikely run by the U.S. hockey team had also finally caught the attention of the American press.
We root for our team against their team, and we take it very personally. And so now, all of a sudden, it was on television. This was a game that had some national interest in the following way beyond hockey.
Yeah, the tensions were high in the crowd, in country.
I know that there was a distinct feeling that we should, we had to beat these Ruskies, we had to beat these communists, and again, that's how most people thought.
This is the big game of the Olympics, the United States versus USSR. There's the horn, so let's switch down to the ice. The officials this afternoon, Kurt Hauser from Switzerland dropping the puck, and Richard Wagner. There's the face-off. Goes into the corner, number 4, John Mayasich for the United States. Picked up 3-on-2 break for the United States. Across to Johnson, the backhand shot.
Early in the first period, my brother was coming down and he gave me a pass coming in off the right wing.
Bill Cleary coming in.
Beautiful goal. He came in on the right side, hit the far corner.
Bill Cleary, number 7, opens up the scoring for the United States.
And I think that helped us as a team because it gave us some confidence and, know that we could skate with this team, we could play with this team.
The Americans had little time to savor their early lead as the Soviets responded immediately.
They had a special play that Sologubov's captain of the team would be back at defense and he'd get the puck at the point and it'd make a 360 and some of the teams would skate around with them. Well, they made certain our team didn't do, but we did it the first time. I almost fell over.
Sologubov, a backhand shot in front. Alexandrov, and he scores! Grebennikov trying to set up shoots, deflected into the cage, and Russia leads by a score of 2-1.
The Russians, bing, one pass to another guy, one Russian puts it in. It's a goal. So adjustments had to been made because the defense tightened up much better. They did a lot more back checking.
One of the Russian guys, I think it was Loktev, was a winger, was a good scorer. He came down, he had a breakaway in, shot low to the right side, and I got a skate on him, which was a tough save.
The puck was right in the crease.
I kind of came across and caught a shot.
And Mayasich shoved it underneath Jack because Jack was on the ice.
Could have been a goal.
Trailing 2-1 halfway through the game, the U.S. badly needed a spark.
Fights Owen of the United States board in the dark uniform. And it's cleared up to Roger Christian.
Billy got it, he was coming off the right wing. And
a pass from Roger, and the goaltender started out. And
across to Williams, over to Bill, Bill shoots, goal!
I just skated in, and I don't know why Puchkov left me about that much room.
With the score now tied 2-2, the Americans could ill afford any mistakes. But with 1 minute remaining in the second period, Roger Christian is called for a slashing penalty.
The first penalty on the United States this afternoon.
John Mayasich comes skating over the bench and I was sitting in that penalty box. He said, "No, you did it." Because we were pretty even with them, then we get a penalty.
And then, of course, killing penalties at that time. You did not get a player back if you were scored upon, and also you could not ice the puck.
When you're sitting in that penalty box, that's a long 2 minutes, I'll tell you. Well, they killed that penalty off, and I don't even know if they got a shot on the net. I'd never go in that box again. That look on his face when he told me that was awful.
The USA and the USSR remained tied at 2 entering the third period.
It was a battle. I mean, guys, Mayasich and Crane blocking shots. And
when you played the Russians, you couldn't let up.
They were looking over us. I think the Canadians were too. They didn't think we could do what we did.
I think in the third period, I think we took the play to them.
Written off by Sidorenko. Sidorenko goes down. Bill Christian has it. Both in front. Now it's Roger Christian deflected by Williams. Roger Christian again, number 10. To Williams out in front. Goal!
Great goal. I mean, the crowd went just absolutely crazy.
Just a bang-bang play in front of the net. And
just being in the right place at the right time, it's just unreal how it worked out.
Trailing 3-2 with time winding down, the Russians mount a frantic attack.
Loktev again sneaks it through. Shot, beautiful save. Shot in front, Alexandrov on the rebound, and look at that pylon. And Alexandrov thought he had a goal.
I think towards the end they were kind of pressing,
And of course, that's when the big fella came in, stopped him cold.
The longer it went, the crowd got into it more, and
35 seconds remaining. USA 3, Russia 2. Alexandrov on the face-off against Johnson. It goes to Bolin. Bolin feeds it up to Loktev. Loktev tries to shoot. He shoots. Glove is close in front. Just misses the lower right-hand corner. Almatov almost tied it up. Russia still on the attack. The goalie is out of the cage. He hasn't gone off the ice as yet.
They're never behind, so the goalie, the goalie has to skate to the bench.
He jumped over the boards, not at his bench.
Now, wait a minute. What's going on here? The goalie is sitting on the boards. The referee is going down there and saying, no, you cannot sit on the boards. If you're going out, you must go. There's the empty net. You must go to your own bench.
It was a mental mistake on his part. Pushkov. Well, they stopped the play. It's illegal substitution.
It was a blur. I can remember being on there. We just can't let them score. We've got to get that puck out.
And I'll never forget that last face-off in the corner.
On the face-off, Bob Fear against Alexandrov. You watch the play. I'll call off the clock. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And the game is over. The United States wins.
They pretty much had a good game every night, and we just upset their rhythm enough to pull them off balance, and we beat them.
They're good hockey players. But, you know, everybody's got his day, and it was our day.
we had beaten the Canadians, we'd beaten the Swedes, beaten the Germans, and now we beat the Russians, for the first time ever. So now you got a game against the Czechs for the gold medal, and we'd beaten the Czechs a couple of times. So.
The next morning, we had to get up early.
It was 8 o'clock in the morning, Sunday morning. I didn't get a chance to go to church that day.
When they drew the teams, I think a lot of them thought that the Russian-Canadian game would probably have been the deciding game.
How do you bounce back from that high? You've beaten the Canadians, you've beaten the Soviets. Now you have to come back at 8 a.m. and beat a very tough Czechoslovakia team.
The Americans were no strangers to the team from Czechoslovakia, meeting for the fourth time in 2 weeks.
If you keep playing somebody, eventually they're going to take advantage of you.
I talked to the team for a few minutes, and in conclusion I said, fellas, we got to remember one thing. Whatever we do, we can't spark this team and let them score a goal early.
U.S. versus Czechoslovakia, there were less than 1,000 people in the stands.
So they dropped the puck. The right defense skated by me 100 miles, took a shot, and the next thing, the puck is in the net, and the score now is Czechoslovakia 1, U.S. nothing.
They scored 8 seconds into the game, and I guess Riley looked over to Jim Claypool and said, is that from the previous game, that score, or what? No, we're losing 1-0.
That was a great speech I gave him. Don't spark them, and they scored in 8 seconds.
When you get to the goal, that's when things get a little tight.
The normally stout American defense struggles against the Czechs, but the American forwards keep pace for a 3-all first-period tie.
We'd come so far, and, we didn't want to lose it there.
You wondered if, this thing was going to fall apart.
In the second period, the lone goal goes to the Czechs, and the Americans enter the locker room trailing 4-3 with the gold medal on the line.
At the end of the second, you're saying, how can you be behind? And then you start thinking, well, maybe we're tired. Or
the Russian captain came into our room, which is highly unusual. I mean, that anybody would come into your room, from another team, let alone a Russian.
He did not speak English, but he kept muffling his voice like this. He kept putting his hand up to his mouth, and everyone was saying, what's... Finally, someone said, I think he means oxygen, because the altitude was high in Squaw Valley.
Sologubov's gesture was not just a favor to the U.S.
There was no love between the Russians and the Czechs.
The Russians did not want one of their satellite countries winning the gold.
If the Czechs would have beat us, That would have meant that Canada would have come in first, we'd have been second, the Czechs would have been third, and the Russians would have been out of the money.
We were all heading out to the ice when they finally got the auction machine there.
I think Jack Corain might have been the first one to pick it up.
Maybe he used it because he said firemen use every once in a while. They have a bad night.
Some of the guys took the oxygen, but some of them didn't.
Rod Pavel and I didn't take any of the oxygen. Like I told Rod that if no one else wants to win this game, I said I'll go beat them guys all by myself. So
5 minutes into the final period, the Americans still trail, but Roger Christian is determined to shift the momentum. The game-tying goal gives the Americans new life.
There's no way I could say my team was tired. No, we weren't tired. We were ready to play.
Hey, we're this close. We've got to go.
Mayasich again. And there is the goal that put the United States ahead. Back to the point position, slap shot by Corain, and it's tipped in.
Bob Cleary's back-to-back goals give the U.S. the lead, but the Americans aren't finished yet.
I think a lot of us were skating 2 feet off the ice because we knew we had that opportunity and we weren't going to be denied.
Mayasich again. Tries a hard one. And the took it in by Roger Christian, number 10, his third goal.
Roger just caught lightning in a bottle, so to speak, and just started pouring in one goal after another.
when you get them kind of games, you can just skate all day. You don't ever hardly get tired.
Bob Cleary with the puck to Brother Bill.
I went back behind the net and my brother had the puck. I said, "Give me that puck." Because I saw Donda wasn't there and I had an opening to go up the ice. And I came up the ice and it opened up perfectly.
Unassisted ball by Bill Cleary, and the score is 8-4.
You just, you get them games where things really work in the third period. We basically couldn't do no wrong.
Watching that clock go down and the seconds go down and saying, God, it could be it.
And we scored six goals in that third period. And, it's just, we're not going to be denied.
I had a good game. I scored 4 goals in that game, and it was pretty much the highlight.
Well, the United States is trailing 4-3 going into this final period. A dramatic 6-goal splurge clinched the first Olympic gold medal in hockey for the USA.
With our captain, up on the podium on our behalf, it's special.
And then they played the national anthem out there. That was very touching. That was really touching.
You get there, and I think in 8 days it was all over.
It's kind of a sad deal because you wouldn't see them guys again for a long time. And you get to be pretty close.
Probably took me till I got home and probably was in bed kind of pinching myself saying, man, what did we accomplish?
We won it on a Sunday afternoon. Monday morning I was working in Green Bay, so there wasn't the hoopla that you see today.
We were saying, geez, I wonder if they'll know that we won the game.
People heard about it, and there was a lot of excitement in hockey communities, but not generally outside of the hockey communities.
These guys did not find fame or fortune or anything like that as Olympic champions.
I think the 60 team has sort of been forgotten.
You should remember the first of anything, right? This is the first U.S. hockey team to win an Olympic gold medal.
There's 17 guys that played in that team that know what they did, and that's the most important thing. And you know what? It's in the record books forever, so we don't have to explain anything.
Quiet pride. I don't have to have everybody telling me how great it was, but I know in my own head.
You think back and say, how can it happen or why?
the 1980 U.S. Olympic hockey team, that was the biggest upset. But I think the best U.S. hockey team ever put together was the 1960 Olympic team. That was the first miracle.
It's something that you appreciate because you never believed it could happen.
Hey, there were great moments for us, and we were the first to win a gold medal for this country.
You know, like I say, I mean, you realize in your own mind what you did, and that's enough for me.
You know, people bring up about the miracle of the 80 team, and it was. You know, obviously they were terrific, and no one wanted them to win more than the 1960 team, believe me. In fact, it's the only game I went back to the Olympics since I played. And I happened to get a couple of tickets, and my wife and my daughter and I went up to the games. And I went down to see Herbie Brooks before the game, and I just wanted to wish him well. And so I was just chatting, and then all of a sudden the team was coming in after the warm-ups, and I saw most of them because I knew most of them. I recruited out for them because I was coaching college at that time. And so I said, Herbie, I won't bother you, I'm going. I said, I'll leave you. So, and it was, I'll tell you, I can remember that game because you could cut the excitement, you know, it was so tense in that arena in Lake Placid. But I'm going out, and all of a sudden the trainer came and he said, Herbie wants you to go in and talk to the team. I looked back and Herbie's going, you want me to go talk to the team? What am I going to say to them, you know? So I did. And I can remember saying to them, I said, you know, I know exactly what you're going through. You're up in this small little hamlet in northern New York in the Adirondacks, and you're oblivious to what's going on in the rest of the world. Because, you know, you're so immersed into what the situation is for you that you just don't realize. I said, and you have captivated not only the American public, you've captivated the public all across this world. That's the excitement you have generated. And I can tell you right now, there's 17 guys that played in that 60 team are rooting more for you than anyone else. And I'll tell you, they know that you are going to win. And that's when I left.